Good afternoon, Abergavenny! Bloody hell, that was nearly like Glastonbury. I mean, let's face it, if you get that tricky 3:17 Friday morning gig out in, sort of the oh bugger, we didn't think they were coming really stage in the Mordor field, or Swindon as it's also known, you only have to say Glastonbury and the place lights up. There are cheers absolutely everywhere. Now, fortunately, Abergavenny isn't like that. Can you imagine it if, Claudia Roden walks on stage and says, "Good afternoon, Abergavenny." And immediately there are flags waving, there are people stripping off their tops, sitting on their boyfriend's shoulders so they can see her. Be an absolute bloody disaster, wouldn't it? Another reason why Abergavenny is not like Glastonbury, and I have this only at second-hand experience, is apparently the ladies' toilets here are much, much nicer. Now, if you're a man, it doesn't matter. In fact, in many ways, you'd rather be at Glastonbury, because Glastonbury has thousands of tents. And as we all know, any bush, tree, or tent is fine. But let's look at Glastonbury. And I am of an age, and don't guess, I'm still younger than the Rolling Stones, is all I'm prepared to admit, that I can remember Glastonbury before it was Glastonbury, when it was the Pilton Pop Festival. And I understand from people who actually have a farm next door to Worthy Farm, that as far as they're concerned, it still is Pilton. Now, a couple of years back, Abergavenny really broke fresh ground by having a raw milk tasting, the first that had been done anywhere in the world, and they followed it up. And last year, they brought a cow to the festival. In the very, very early days of Glastonbury, or Pilton as it was, Michael Eavis, who at that stage had hair on top of his head as well as underneath it, used to come round to every tent in the morning and give away free raw milk. I don't think that happens anymore. I think there are rather too many people there and probably not enough cows. But there are links between the two. They both sit at the top of their food chains. But Glastonbury has changed. It was Pilton. For years then, it was Glastonbury. I understand from the hip young things who are around today that nowadays people go to Glasto, which is a totally different animal. The two also attract some really big names. You come here and you get some of the huge names in the food world. You go to Glastonbury, you get some of the really huge names in the music world. But Glastonbury sets out to challenge. I mean, the absolute outrage when they bring on hip-hop, top of the bill acts, or heavy metal bands at Glastonbury, absolutely unheard of. Now, that's unlikely ever to happen here. Can you imagine the absolute outrage if the keynote speakers and chef dems next year were done by Ronald McDonald and Colonel Sanders? There would be, as was mentioned earlier, an absolute food riot. So Abergavenny really isn't like Glastonbury in that respect. One of my fears about the future of food festivals is they may take the Glastonbury route and become increasingly corporate events, but they're not. And they don't actually sit very comfortably with the whole rock festival idea. Abergavenny takes place every year around the third weekend of September, and that's the start of a whole new sort of series of events into which I think that Abergavenny actually fits much better. At the same time that we were kicking off here yesterday morning, the first of the party political conferences was beginning up in Manchester. And over the next few weeks, we're going to see all the major parties, the CBI and the TUC, all have their conferences and look possibly at the future shape of the country. And in many ways, that's what Abergavenny does. It brings people together to look at the future of food in several ways. The food conference on a Friday looks at it. It's becoming increasingly mainstream. I mean, now, good God, we've got Jay Rayner and the kitchen cabinet here. We've got proper debate about food happening here. So it's actually focusing people far more on what food is all about. And it's great that we get 30, 40,000 people a year coming to enjoy good food, to meet up with good friends, and to talk about it. Now, we will never get the 180,000 that Glastonbury gets, and that's a good thing. Because a lot of people go to Glastonbury because it's a lifestyle event. You don't find many people here doing the same. There will be some, without a doubt, and shame on them. Because if they're coming here and don't really want to know about good food, about meeting good producers, having a good time, and most importantly, meeting great friends and having a really good social event for a couple of days where you just feel comfortable, warm, safe, and you know you're going to get bloody well fed and drunk while you're here, then, don't come. I don't want to see that kind of event happening here. I think Abergavenny is not like Glastonbury. In many ways, it is far more exciting than Glastonbury ever could be. So let's keep it going. Let's hope that in a few years' time it isn't known as sort of, oh, we're going to Abergavenny, or we're going, down to Abo. That'll be really brilliant. Let's keep it real. Let's keep the food festival that we love, and let's make sure that it has a bright future. And I hope to see you all back here next week. And in the meantime, thank you very much. You've been wonderful. Goodbye, Abergavenny!